I really don't know how to do. I don't know how to do promos for stuff like this. So why don't you just sit back and wait for me to finish this thing up, and then we'll be right back with Week in Rock.
This week, we'll have Java and Jive with hipster god Tom Waits, a good wine with Gary Shandling, and a movie review or two with River Phoenix. Hi, I'm Kurt Loder. Welcome to the Week in Rock. Not since the publication of Albert Goldman's Elvis Presley biography in 1981 has a book been so roundly savaged in the press as Goldman's latest dead rock star opus, The Lives of John Lennon. Beatles fans have been predictably appalled by the cascade of sleaze that comes pouring out of this best-selling bio, and critics more rigorously have questioned Goldman's sources and methods and heaped considerable ridicule on his writing style. Goldman dismisses all of this as the whining of disillusioned rock fans whose hero he's revealed to be all too human. But his work continues to be denounced as the second assassination of John Lennon, a charge that's backed up most convincingly in the new issue of Rolling Stone magazine that hits the stands on Monday. Right now, let's take a closer look at the year's most controversial book.
I think that book says a lot more about Albert Goldman than it does about John Lennon. Yeah, and Albert will know exactly what I mean because he's a piece of trash.
That, in a nutshell, has been the critical reaction to author Albert Goldman's 6 years in the making biography, The Lives of John Lennon. Even before the book's publication at the end of August, friends and fans of the late Beatle, alerted by 2 preview excerpts in People magazine, were already appalled.
I wouldn't read that stuff, honestly. I mean, I heard about it, but, you know, I knew him to be one kind of a person, and I thought he was really a cool guy. And I mean, I'd been around him when he was really nuts, but he was still a really nice person, and I don't know that I believe all that stuff.
Author Goldman dismisses such criticisms.
Nobody wants to bring you bad news. They want to bring you the good news. I started off as a great admirer of John Lennon, and I'm still a great admirer of John Lennon the artist. But what I discovered about John Lennon the man was not so appealing or attractive. But what is my responsibility for discovering these things? It seems to me he led the life. I'm simply reporting.
So the question becomes, how good is Goldman's reporting? The labor of 6 years and a purported 1,200 interviews. According to an in-depth report in the new Rolling Stone by writers David Frick and Jeffrey Resner, the answer is deplorable, and made all the more offensive by the hateful tone in which it's conveyed.
The whole book is just a portrait of a man with no redeeming qualities, no morality, and no talent whatsoever. If the guy was such a loser, what did he spend 6 years for?
The book's most controversial contentions are that Lennon had a long-running homosexual affair with Beatles manager Brian Epstein, that he was deeply misogynistic and uncontrollably violent, and even feared he had caused the death of early Beatle Stu Sutcliffe by kicking him in the head, and that he was an unloving father to his second son, Sean.
I don't blame the people who are all shook up about this book because it is shocking. It was shocking to me. But of course, I've had 6.5 years to adjust to it. They have had, you know, maybe 6.5 days.
According to Rolling Stone, though, Goldman's allegations are all shock and little substance. His book, the article concludes, is riddled with factual inaccuracies, embroidered accounts, and suspect information from dubious sources, some of them convicted felons. Rolling Stone also points out that many of Goldman's revelations are very old news, and that much of his narrative is derived from earlier books by other authors, some of them inadequately credited. Then there's the question of Goldman's musical expertise.
One of his main criticisms is that much of Lennon's songwriting is based on the little theme to Three Blind Mice. And in order to back this up, he offers all of 3 songs, one of which is My Mommy's Dead, which is the 48-second coda at the end of the Plastic Ono Band record. Now, what is, is he a fan of the music or isn't he a fan of the music?
A fair question. Goldman, now 61, once described the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever as a, quote, massive affirmation of meaninglessness. And in his new book, he characterizes Lennon's song, Imagine, as monotonous and feeble. There's also something curious about his penchant for writing books about people who are dead and can no longer defend themselves, although he's quick to defend this practice.
Inevitably, biography deals with people who are dead. People who are dead can't defend themselves. But you sure can't say John Lennon lacks for defenders.
In Goldman's view, Rolling Stone is discredited by its long personal relationship with Lennon and with Ono, but other critics of his work are hardly in short supply. The New York Times called the book an inept account filled with trivia and bad writing. The LA Times described Goldman's sources as a couple of people with scores to settle or axes to grind. And critic Dave Marsh, writing in the new issue of Rock and Roll Confidential, slags Goldman for his consistent anti-rock agenda. In addition, people in a position to know whereof Goldman speaks dispute his accounts, like Paul McCartney, who calls the book trash.
There's a bit about me where John's supposed to come round to my house and put his foot through a picture or something. Well, I mean, it never happened, you know. So if one of them never happened, it's quite possible that a lot of the stuff in the book never happened.
Whatever the case, Lennon's fans have come forth with a response that, in the end, may be the only one that really matters.
Sounds like maybe this guy's out to make a buck. Possibly. But hey, you want to know about John Lennon? Listen to the music. You don't have to go read a book about what somebody else wrote, right? Listen to the tunes.
The Lives of John Lennon debuted on the New York Times bestseller list at number 2 3 weeks ago, but by last week had slipped to number 4. The controversy that continues to surround the book seems to be giving it renewed commercial life, though. On the New York Times list, it's back up to number 2 this week. And by the way, there's a decidedly more upbeat portrait of John Lennon coming up. It's the film documentary Imagine, authorized by Yoko Ono and featuring lots of rare Lennon footage. And it opens across the country next Friday. Well, this has been a scary week for admirers of the U.S. Constitution. In Washington, conservative Senator Strom Thurmond strove mightily to ram through the Senate a bill that would have allowed the government to confiscate all merchandise in any book, record, or video store that was deemed by local authorities to be selling obscene materials, with the definition of an obscenity predictably left up to those same local authorities. This bill, the so-called Child Protection and Obscenity Enforcement Act of 1988, was attached by Thurmond to a larger bill, which was unanimously passed by the Senate on Wednesday, although not before the Thurmond addendum's more hideous affronts to the First Amendment were considerably watered down. Senate Majority Leader Robert Byrd then tabled the whole bill for another vote, which may make the matter moot, or maybe not. In any case, a spokesman for the American Civil Liberties Union told MTV News that Thurmond's bill, even in its semi-sanitized version, is still, quote, blatantly unconstitutional. And as Colleen O'Connor of the New York ACLU put it, is Senator Thurmond the man to decide what you and I have access to? That's a good question. Let's take a look at this guy in action.
We are trying to ban obscenity. If you want to protect the children of this country, you've got to take a stand. Talk about it may be unconstitutional. Everything we pass here, somebody alleges is constitutional about it.
I think not. In the 15 years since he made his first record, Tom Waits, with his fractured fables, 4-pack-a-day vocals, and blues on the moon musical style, has become rock's reigning boho hipster. There's no one else quite like him, and now, even if you've never caught him in concert, you can find out why firsthand. Big Time, a feature-length documentary of Waits' critically acclaimed 1987 tour, opens in 12 major cities across the country this weekend. To find out more about it, we tracked Waits down in New York recently, bought him a cup of coffee, and let him roll.
Tom Waits isn't your run-of-the-mill rock and roller. In a way, he's more of a modern-day vaudevillian.
Just outside on Western, a place that sells used erotica. Think about it. Where do they clean it? Who cleans it?
Waits has spent the last 15 years trying to carve out his own place in the pop pantheon. Now, his first live-in-concert movie, Big Time, which documents his remarkable 1987 tour, looks likely to do the trick. Why'd he finally decide to put his stage act on film?
I get home from the road and I rarely have any pictures or anything, and I try to remember what tour was that, or is that the one where I wore the power tie and the white shoes or what? So it helps me. Historically.
Born in Pomona, California 38 years ago, Waits was a strange kid.
I used to lay down underneath cars while they were parked and wait for them to start up and drive away.
And although as an adult he's appeared in 7 movies, including Ironweed, The Cotton Club, and Down by Law, Waits says that as a kid, a film career was the furthest thing from his mind.
I wanted to be an engineer, or an Indian.
As a teenager, he fell in love with the music of Little Walter, Thelonious Monk, George Gershwin, and, he says, Princess Ema Sumac. A musical career seemed the next logical step.
Sunglasses, shampoo, big cars, blondes, travel. Looked like it was for me.
Downtown trends of food for those Brooklyn girls.
Waits' music is a vivid melange of blues, jazz, and joyful noises. And over the course of such recent albums as Rain Dogs and Frank's Wild Years, it has grown more refined. And his songs and stories have taken on a character all their own.
Don't plant your bad days. They grow into weeks. The weeks grow into months. Before you know it, you got yourself a bad year. Take it from me. Choke those little bad days. Choke them down to nothing. They're your days. Choke them.
I feel better prepared when I sit down to write now. Yeah. I had a few trips to Europe, that type of thing, yeah.
So that's Tom Waits, singer of songs, teller of tales, entertainer extraordinaire, a man who's finally found his place in this strange scheme of things.
You are innocent when you
Mr. Tom Waits. If you want to check out his real roots, you might dig up some old Captain Beefheart sides. The movie is called Big Time. It's playing now in some big city near you, and there's a soundtrack album just out that goes right along with it. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with Gary Shandling, River Phoenix, and a great new group called Circus of Power when the Week in Rock continues.
We discuss lots of things among ourselves. It's not really a matter of trying to teach someone how to think the way that you do. I mean, what can we teach Sting? I don't know that we can.
Well, Sting once made a statement that he knew all the answers to all the questions, so that's why I was taking over.
It was more of a thing where we just get 2 hamburgers now instead of 1, maybe a little ketchup. We're not, occasional relish. Yeah, we're not trying to change too drastically.
Still the same warm-hearted guy.
Still the same guy.
Just driving Mercedes. That's my hamburger.
Hi, and welcome back to The Week in Rock. Who's the funniest man on TV today? It's Gary Shandling, the star of that one-of-a-kind comedy series, It's Gary Shandling Show. This hilariously innovative half-hour started out 2 years ago on the Showtime cable service, then got syndicated last year to the Fox network, where it's been steadily building a national audience. If you've never had the pleasure of seeing it, here's a look at what you've been missing.
How does my hair look? Your hair looks great. I've never seen such a handsome man.
Is the character you're playing a lot like you?
Why, is there something wrong with my hair?
Gary Shandling established himself as America's favorite whiny comic with his frequent guest hosting stints on The Tonight Show. But it's his own series, simply called It's Gary Shandling Show, that's establishing him as one of TV's most innovative talents.
It's a boy. It's a baby boy. Born on this show. Hi.
The premise of the show is that Shandling, a TV star who lives in Sherman Oaks, California, plays Gary Shandling, a TV star who lives in Sherman Oaks, California.
Most people in this country talk about New York and L.A. in glowing terms, but when they talk about Sherman Oaks, you can see their eyes really lighting up.
The show takes place mainly in his living room, except for side trips in his little electric car, and the co-stars are his neighbors. The central innovation is that Shandling frequently interrupts the action to speak directly to the audience.
You know, I haven't felt this awkward since my gym teacher hit on me.
You know, the networks had made such a big deal out of talking to the camera, saying it didn't work and all, yet that's what they do on the news, and it functions very nicely. You don't need some phony plot on the news where the newscasters just talk to each other and you feel like you're looking in. They turn and talk right to the camera and say, what's going on?
With all this illusion and reality business, we wondered what the real Gary Shandling was like. So we visited the Shandling Show's set in Los Angeles recently and discovered that Shandling, who created and writes every episode of the series with Saturday Night Live alumnus Alan Zweibel, is pretty much of a workaholic.
I work so hard on this show and we write so much that by the time I get home, which is about 10 or 11 o'clock, I pretty much just pass out.
It's like the Mertzes in a way.
Sort of, I can imagine.
Gary would be Ethel.
Nevertheless, Shandling's cast members obviously adore their boss.
Gary's the boss? No, you're kidding. I had no idea.
He whines, he really does whine. Makes your teeth crack.
Great, real talented, you know.
No faults, no flaws.
Oh, your kidney's a mess.
There's no coffee, you know, there's no coffee.
God, just shoot me now. I think I have some kind of chemistry with Gary Shandling. Something's really wrong.
Gary has lots of offbeat guests on his show. In fact, our own MTV news crew was wondering if they might wangle their way into an episode. Any chances?
Your crew would have to present us with sexual favors in order to get on the show. Yeah, I think that's how they basically got this job, if I'm not wrong just by looking at him.
Gary's show kicks off its third season on Showtime on October 21st, and he'll be doing his first live Gary Shandling Show special on November 8th, election night, by which time you may be ready for a good laugh. Another very hot name in Hollywood these days is that of 18-year-old River Phoenix. He first started building a buzz in the 1986 film Stand By Me, and now, as the son of two fugitive 60s radicals in Running on Empty, he's become a full-blown star. But there's more to Phoenix's film career than those two hits, and we recently asked him to run it all down for us.
I'm just a wish. I get to go someplace where nobody knows me.
They showed that scene on the Today Show, and it gives it away. Honey, please don't show that. That is just not the thing to do. Okay, show it if you have to. I don't care. What am I gonna do? I'm just a salesman. I'm just selling this movie, and show the scene.
You can do what you want to. You can tell your dad anything. I don't care. I just needed you to know. I don't know what I'm doing.
Aside from Running on Empty, I'd have to say that Mosquito Coast is the top on my list. I mean, I got a lot of enjoyment out of working on it, and I feel it's a good film.
It was not an easy life those first weeks in Geronimo. It was no coconut kingdom of free fruit and grass huts and sunny days under the bam, under the boo.
Watch the strings, kids. Good morning, ladies.
It's kind of sad, I guess, but there was some symbolism that the general public didn't have the time or were too lazy to uncover.
Look, I'm the black sheep of a super rich family, and I've contributed a substantial amount to the maintenance of this dump.
The concept in doing it, for me, was that it was very diverse from Mosquito Coast, and originally it was intended to be more of a comedy.
Are you gonna be all right?
Don't worry. Worry.
It was okay, though, because I was a victim in the other films, you know, this kind of victim / tragic hero, and this was now like I was victimizing.
I want to stay.
So, you know, we'll see. Time will tell. I'm really happy acting right now.
That's good. Los Angeles may be the metal music capital of North America right now, but New York City is catching up fast. There's a whole new hard rock scene in Manhattan these days, spearheaded by such ferocious groups as Raging Slab and the Cycle Sluts from Hell. But the first of these bands to succumb to a record company bidding war and actually put out an album is an outfit called Circus of Power. And here's why they're suddenly so hot.
Circus of Power has stirred up the biggest hard rock buzz to come out of New York City in a long time. They've only been together about a year, but they've already managed to get a record deal and release a debut album. What's their secret?
We got signed for being a live band.
Yeah, we got signed for being a live band and playing every week in Manhattan for a year. Every gig we could.
Circus of Power consists of 4 hardcore New Yorkers and a charismatic Canadian frontman, writer and singer Alex Mitchell. Iggy Pop gave them one of the songs for their debut, a track called Crazy, but the rest are all raucous originals, mainly about wild women and wild, wild times.
She got a sweet, funky power train. Rear end drive, make a man insane.
So are these rock's newest wild guys?
Everybody wants to go, are you guys bad boys? And we're not going to say we are. When you got to say something like that, then you're not.
What is their offstage life like then?
I mean, I don't know anybody that isn't into sex and a little bit of drugs. One of my cigarettes that you smoke. I mean, you know, that's us. We're not going to be coming out saying we're not going to be on 21 Jump Street.
Hard rock's success definitely seems to be in the offing for Circus of Power, but they're determined not to let it go to their heads or to their raw, uncompromising sound.
I hate bands that after a few records or when they turn 40 or whatever the hell it is, that things change. I mean, I look at a guy like Leon Russell or Johnny Winter. I'd rather go see those guys than see Mick Jagger or something.
Definitely.
Or
Mick Jagger.
Or Steve Winwood or someone that just isn't making music. Fire drill. That makes. Well, we got with any point or has got any feeling.
Circus of Power's music bears little resemblance to the more pop-oriented fare dispensed by most LA-based bands, but they do have one characteristic in common with at least one West Coast group, Guns N' Roses, and that's a heavy predilection for elaborate tattoos. Not just on their arms, but on their chests, their backs, well, we really can't go into this too deeply. But why all the bodywork, you ask?
It expresses an individual's way to look, you know? Obviously, we don't want to look like everybody else. That's Who wants to be an airbrushed clone that walks around? Nobody. In New York City, to get noticed is almost impossible. We're working on it.
The album, like the group, is called Circus of Power, and it sounds like you'll be hearing a lot more of them. We'll be back in a minute with a visit to LA's mysterious Magic Castle when the Week in Rock continues. Hi, and welcome back to the Week in Rock. This was another bad week in the ever-lively life of soul pioneer James Brown. Last weekend, after his latest run-in with the law, for which he was hit with 11 charges, including assault with intent to kill, Brown was arrested again last Sunday, this time for drunk driving. It was Brown's 4th arrest since last April, and this time, says a local sheriff, he could get the book thrown at him. At last report, Brown, who's said to suffer from a stress control problem, was on his way into an outpatient drug treatment program. If you, like James Brown, sometimes wish that all your troubles could somehow be made to just disappear, you might consider a visit to LA's renowned Magic Castle. The castle is actually a private club for professional magicians, a luxury clubhouse for the 2,500 members of the Academy of Magical Arts, a nonprofit organization dedicated to what it calls the advancement of the art of magic. What goes on behind the castle's ornate doors? Few non-magicians can say. You have to know somebody to even get inside. Fortunately, we did. And what we found once we gained entry was a whole new generation of master magicians honing their acts and, as you're about to see, having a lot of fun doing it.
From the outside, the Magic Castle looks like any other enormous turn-of-the-century mansion. But inside is where the magic begins. Member magicians have the run of this eye-popping place, drinking at paneled bars and maybe picking up a trick or two from fleet-fingered bartenders. But the main attraction at the Magic Castle is a showroom called the Palace of Magic. If you thought there was nothing more to magic in the 80s than rabbits and hats, well, here you'll find out otherwise.
Kids, don't ever do this at home. Unless, of course, your folks aren't there, in which case, go for it.
Yes, there's a brand new breed of magicians plying the ancient craft these days. Some are part comics like Larry Wilson. Others, such as Greg Wilson, who's been performing since he was 4, are more in the classical mold, but with a brand new beat.
They're like girls that just follow magicians around, or...
God, I hope so.
And then there's Kevin James, a sort of new wave wizard with more than a tinge of hard rock flash to his act.
Well, I've taken a lot from the music industry in my particular work.
In what regard, exactly?
Just in style. I mean, most of the time you see a magician, he's in a tuxedo and pulling rabbits out of hats, and I would rather tear their heads off.
But the most amazing attraction at the Magic Castle, at least for connoisseurs of the art, is the close-up room. Here, avid professionals can seat themselves just a few feet away from the performers and still come away totally perplexed.
If I could actually do it, you think I need to work for a living?
Speaking of magic, how is it the little Swiss company that drew jeers of derision 5 years ago when it announced its intention to start making cheap, fun watches has somehow managed to sell 50 million of the things since then, and thus to have the last laugh? We weren't exactly dying to know the answer to this question, but when the Swatch Company invited us to attend its big 5th anniversary celebration in the tiny town of Biel near Zurich, well, we figured we could spare the time.
We produce between 50 and 60,000 pieces a day. Our total involvement to make this a fashion statement a new statement to express your humor, your feelings, I think brought it to much higher realms than just selling time and the watch.
Coming down the mountain.
La qualité est suisse, et puis Swatch, c'est comme ça.
Il y a beaucoup de couleurs.
Something you cannot figure out 100%. It's not season after season the same way, so it gives you newness and freshness, and I think that's very important for Swatch.
Wow, Swatch Mania in Switzerland. Well, that once again does it for another edition of The Week in Rock. Next week, we'll have a talk with Robert Plant, a bone-chilling encounter with Dead Ringers director David Cronenberg, and an in-studio visit from a wild new guitar ace named Jeff Healey. We'll see you then.
Jamming on the shoulder, loop top blown out head.